Thank you so much for joining us today, Sean. I really appreciate it. It's been great to get to know you over the last couple of months. For those of you that don't know, Sean Gulyas is one of the founders of the company HumanWorks, an HR consultancy that really helps companies to work on their culture. He spoke at one of our events, Authentic Leadership, about 2 months ago now, and he did such an amazing job. We had 65 people show up in a partnership with HumanWorks, and Sean presented to all 65 people as if he was talking to one. And he did such an amazing job bringing them out of their comfort zone, getting them talking about a challenging topic, which is culture after chaos. So thanks so much, Sean, for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. And Kristen, I'm grateful for your kind words. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Well, you're an amazing human. You're one of my favorite people that I've met over the past year, Sean. So thank you so much for joining us.
You are so very welcome.
I have a couple of questions for you around this topic, culture after chaos. It's something that's somewhat difficult to get our arms around, right? How do we create a culture coming out of this? But I also know, luckily, because of what we just went through, a lot of companies have shown a spotlight on this area, maybe because of this global pandemic that we're coming out of. This social uprising that we faced as well in 2020. What do you think companies are facing when they're seeing this global pandemic?
Well, Kristen, I think you know me. I'm a glass half full kind of guy, right?
Absolutely.
So I am hoping that what we've lived through has changed us. I want it to change us. And I don't mind if it was a natural or this forced change in a way, because sometimes I think we need some of that just to burst a bubble or a way of doing things that we've been doing for years.
Yes.
So a good question when you ask that, a good question I've been asking leaders, whether it's individuals or teams, is that what has changed in how you lead? What really has changed? Are you going back to what was, or what are you doing differently? And there were three things that I'm trying to really listen for and help leaders realize. And the first one, it is their job as leaders and as a company to bring clarity to what's important. And for me, that's values, that's purpose, that's an individual's impact. So I'm listening for that, number one. Two,
awesome.
Around the social uprising, Kristen, I'm sort of trying to get at, do they really understand what belonging means? And I'm talking about a person, not having a DEI committee, team, whatever you want, a task force. I'm saying it's in the leader's everyday words and actions. I'm listening for that, because then I know something's changed. And the third thing was, gosh, if we haven't learned anything about vulnerability over this period, let me tell you, pop that bubble right now, leader. Get with it. Show that side of yourself, because we've all experienced those moments.
Oh, I agree, Sean. 3 really great points. And my favorite that I connect to with that is that sense of belonging. The D&I movements, is it just a movement that doesn't stick, or is it something that really makes us focus on whether or not the new employees coming in, or even the employees that have been here for 20 years, feel like they belong to their companies? So I love you bringing that up. It's huge.
I agree. And, I believe it's a leader's role to role model and care in those small moments, and to sort of be vulnerable in those small moments. So I totally agree with you.
Now, you brought something up in the first point that you made too, which I think is really something we should focus on. Do you think there's really been enough chaos to make the changes that companies have been making due to all of this actually stick? Do you think we'll continue with some of the things that we're focusing on now, or do you think a lot of companies are just going to slide back to the way things used to be because it might feel easier? What are your thoughts?
That's a great question. And again, I'm going to focus on what you said about belonging. I do think there has been a shift there, Kristen. I really do. Because where before there might have been no discussion, there is now a team. I was knocking that, but at the same time, I love it that at least there's something there now, or people are going, we need a role focused on that. Now, my fear is that the change, though, is not going to come from those. As I said, it's sort of re-looking at, is belonging in the organization's values, Kristen? If it's not there, A committee is not going to solve that. It has to be a part of who the organization is. So it's in the values of the organization. And again, what expectations are they setting up for leaders? Because leaders are the ones that are really going to live any of that change.
Oh, I love that, Sean. So many of our companies, they don't even have a real training program put together for their mid-level management.
Right.
The people that are directly affecting the employees, the base employee of a company, right? And
Right.
if that's not a part of their culture, it's just not happening.
I second that motion.
Right? I really hope that some of these changes and some of these discussions, like you said, at least we're talking about it. And that's the first step, is to just discuss it. So a third question to throw out there at you, do you think that organizations even know where to start? They were with all of this back end, and now what? Where do we even begin?
Well, I'm going to speak business terms, bottom line. If that doesn't impact somebody, what are those? If you had to look at bottom line areas to focus on, and one is that human resource, the talent area, because I think getting the best and aligning people with their talents, with role, keeping them engaged, that's what's going to impact that culture the most, and that's what's going to help people the most. You know, at HumanWorks, we use a tool called the Kolbe assessment, I think you're aware of, which can really predict talents and strengths to any role at any level. And we've heard more and more organizations say, I want to know more about that, because it helps us create sort of a language around that is around talent, but it's non-biased as far as race, gender, or ethnicity. So I think that's really important. In that talent area, I also, you think of culture, you want an engaged culture, you want to retain the best people. And I'm hoping we've all had a moment in our lives where sometime in our work life where you said, I'm adding value. My talents are being used and I'm free to do things my way. I think if you start doing and getting that feeling in people, then I think that organization is going to be energized. I think people will be retained. I think people will stay engaged. I always say, hey, don't do another team building activity, but create a place where there's ways to connect, where trust can be built, where people can learn from each other. To me, that's going to have a bottom line impact.
Oh, I love that. And I agree. When we have great cultures where people want to work, where people feel engaged, how much more can we do as a business, as a company? If trust is built and people feel like they can contribute, how much more will people contribute, right? Companies that go from good to great are those that really embrace their people, right?
I agree. And then probably the second area, Kristen, would be around just trying to create and simplify an organization's sort of way of doing strategy and planning so that everybody in it really has a clear line of sight to how they're impacting the success or the challenges that are happening in the organization. And I think if organizations can focus on that, again, another bottom line impact that's going to make the culture come alive, but at the same time, efficiency, accountability, it has better outcomes at the base of it too.
Sean, my volunteer organization right now is going through our own discovery of who we are, what is our vision, what is our mission. And all that could come from me. I could spend a weekend and do a bunch of planning and thinking of our history, that type of thing. But what's great is I'm asking all of our volunteers to come together and say what they love about our group and where they want our group to go. Because the more involved they are in that, the more involved they'll want to be in growing that industry and growing that. It's the same with our companies, right? If we come to them and say, this is who we are now, how involved do they feel in that? How engaged do they feel in that? But if instead we come to them and say, I want you to be a part of this, doesn't that make such a huge difference? And you can do that regardless of what size company you are. You guys have worked with small, medium, and large size companies and helped them do all of this, right, Sean?
You bet. And that's a great approach that you're taking, asking people and getting other perspectives, because that's when you really get the full picture. And that's when you'll hear things where an individual or a leader or an owner or a founder may miss, they don't have that clear picture. Where get those different voices, you're really going to come up with something special that way, Kristen. I'm glad you're approaching it that way.
Thanks. Again, Sean, thank you so much. HumanWorks, such an amazing organization. I'll post a link below to their company so you can get to know a little bit more about them. You guys have been such a great partnership for Authentic Leadership. I can't wait to do more events with you guys. Thank you.
Well, I hope this is the first of many conversations, Kristen. Okay?
Absolutely, Sean.
Okay. You take care.
You too.